Pretty picture there of Charleston, South Carolina, because we're going to begin this half hour with a conversation with Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, who you might have seen last night in a CNN town hall. The former governor and UN ambassador called China the #1 national security threat and said the U.S. must support Ukraine's fight against Russia. She also talked about hot-button social issues for GOP voters like gun laws, abortion laws, and transgender rights. So, Ambassador Nikki Haley, it is my pleasure to welcome you to CBS Mornings. Thank you for getting up with us this morning. You are in Iowa today, where you have been for a very long time. You were the first candidate to announce, and you seem committed to visiting every farm in that state. One thing that voters do when they're hearing your pitch is imagine you in the job right now if you were in charge. So I want to start there. We had this incident in the Taiwan Strait yesterday where a Chinese warship cut in front of an American destroyer. How should the U.S. respond?
Well, with strength to start with. I mean, I think it's not just that. You look at Russia invading Ukraine, you look at, China on the march, you look at Iran building a bomb, you look at North Korea testing ballistic missiles. None of this would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. I mean, the idea that we left Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends, but more importantly, think about what that told our enemies. So now they smell blood in the water, and we're seeing they sense weakness, and they're trying to move through. What we need to do is show strength. We need to let them know what we expect of them and what we're going to do about it.
Do you think military conflict with China could come in the next 48 years?
I think what's important is that we prevent that. And the way you prevent that is that you have to be strong. And that's why I think it's so important that Ukraine has to win this war on Russia. Because if Ukraine wins this war, it sends a message to China on Taiwan. It sends a message to Iran wanting to build a bomb and threaten Israel. It sends a message, to North Korea and all the other enemies that want to destroy us. If Ukraine loses, then Russia's going to move into Poland and the Baltics, and we're looking at World War III, and you're going to see China move into Taiwan. So it doesn't mean we put money on the ground, doesn't mean we put troops on the ground, but what it means is we should continue to work with our allies so that they have the equipment and the ammunition they need to win.
Madam Ambassador, let's talk about abortion. That is a defining issue for many voters, particularly there in Iowa. Last night, you declined to take a position on a federal 6-week ban, calling it hypothetical, would never pass, as you described it. But where would you draw that line? How many weeks, at what point federally?
What I've said is that I am unapologetically pro-life, but it's a very personal issue. I'm pro-life because my husband was adopted. I'm pro-life because I had trouble having my children. And what I think we need to do is understand everybody has a story. I don't judge people for being pro-choice any more than I want them to judge me for being pro-life. But if we're going to have a conversation about a federal ban, let's have an honest one. In order to do a ban, you'd have to have a majority of the House, 60 Senate votes, and a signature by a president. We haven't had 60 pro-life senators in over 100 years. We might have 45. So the reality is whatever we do on the federal level has to be consensus. So a Republican president can't ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban all these laws that are happening in the states. So where can we agree? We can agree, let's stop late-term abortions. Let's make sure that if doctors and nurses don't believe in abortion, they shouldn't have to perform them. Let's encourage more adoptions and make sure our children in foster care feel love. Let's make sure contraception is accessible. And let's say that if a woman has an abortion, she shouldn't go to jail or get the death penalty. Let's start there. And instead of demonizing the issue, let's humanize the issue.
Madam Ambassador, another topic driving conversation today is transgender rights. There was a question last night about transgender sports, particularly youth sports. You took a run at it, and I don't know if it came out exactly as you intended. I want to play that sound and then have you respond to it. Let's go with it.
Biological boys playing in girls' sports. It is the women's issue of our time. My daughter ran track in high school. I don't even know how I would have that conversation with her. How are we supposed to get our girls used to the fact that biological boys are in their locker rooms? And then we wonder why a third of our teenage girls seriously contemplated suicide last year? We should be growing strong girls, confident girls.
So, Madam Ambassador, I wanted you to clarify, if you could, the connection there to teen suicide.
Well, I mean, first of all, when girls are seeing I talked to a senior high school girl in New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago, and she said in every single classroom they're talking about transgenderism. And she said, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells because we don't know what we can say and what we can't. Girls need to feel confident in their own skin. They need to be able to do that. When you see someone like Dylan Mulvaney mocking women, when you see the fact that they're now having to go and have biological boys in their locker rooms, that's not good for teenage girls. That's not something they need to be focused on. It's not that we don't understand and appreciate the challenges of someone who's transgender, but why are you putting that on everybody else? Let the girls have their own locker room. Let the girls have their own sports. That was the whole point of Title IX. Don't go and push, the challenges of a small minority onto the majority of our girls. They don't deserve that.
Madam Ambassador, another question is what care should be on the table when a 12-year-old child in this country assigned female at birth says, actually, I feel more comfortable living as a boy. What should the law allow the response to be?
Well, I think the law should stay out of it, and I think parents should handle it. This is a job for the parents to handle. And then when that child becomes 18, if they want to make more of a permanent change, they can do that. But I think up until then, we see with our teenage kids, they go through a lot during puberty. They go through a lot of confusion. They go through a lot of anxiety. They go through a lot of pressures. We should support them the whole way through, but we don't need to go and enforce something in schools. We don't need schools sitting there hiding from the parents what gender pronoun they're using. We don't need to have those conversations in schools. Those are conversations that should be had at home.
All right, Nikki Haley, first female governor of South Carolina, hoping to be the first female president of the United States. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Go to NikkiHaley.com.